Hello everyone, my name is Dick Pafford. I'm a Tarrant County Master Gardener and a Citizen Forester. And today Patsy Miller and I are going to give a presentation on the trees of North Texas, how to pick them, plant them, and keep them.
And I'm Patsy Miller. I'm a Master Gardener and a Citizen Forester.
I'm going to start the presentation with a short presentation from TRWD. The Tarrant County Master Gardener Association has partnered with TRWD and they are sponsoring today's program. They also help with our other educational projects. The Tarrant Regional Water District, TRWD, maintains 4 area lakes and pipelines needed to provide surface water to local water treatment plants so they can clean it to meet our drinking water standards for our communities. They also work with many cities in Tarrant County, such as Fort Worth, Arlington, Mansfield, and many others to provide water conservation programs to the community. Conservation is an important water supply strategy to help meet the needs of a growing population. There are currently 2.3 million people in Tarrant County. This is expected to double over the next 50 years. That's why TRWD supports many programs that help save water through outdoor watering and garden education. At SaveTarrantWater.com website, you can sign up for free weekly watering advice custom to your location. All you have to do is enter your zip code, and they will send you weekly watering advice for your area. If you are a resident of Tarrant County, you can sign up for a free sprinkler system checkup, where a licensed irrigator comes to your home and provides a comprehensive evaluation of your system with recommendations to reduce watery waste. There's also an event calendar where you can find information about future classes and workshops, such as this one. So be sure and check out SaveTarrantWater.com and sign up for their free services. Okay, now I'm going to turn the program over to Patsy.
As we noted earlier, that the title for our program is Trees for North Texas, How to Pick Them, Plant Them, and Keep Them. Before we start giving some specifics, it's always good to have reasons why it's important to plant trees and why they contribute so much to our lives. Maybe number one is they add to our property value. A single healthy tree can add thousands of dollars to the value of an urban lot, depending on the size, location, and age of the tree. Deciduous trees that drop their leaves in winter can cut both heating and cooling costs by shading the summer sun, but allowing the winter sun to warm our house. Trees add beauty and aesthetics to a landscape, whether it's a small flowering tree used as a focal point, or the majestic oak that maybe you built your house around. In urban settings, neighborhood trees have been shown to reduce crime and foster a sense of community. More people go outside in neighborhoods where there are trees. The children play outside, and people get to meet and talk to their neighbors. And studies have shown that hospital patients who can see a green space from their window recover faster. And trees just make life more pleasant. We feel calmer and more at ease with trees around us. Trees can also be used to screen areas that you want to block either the view or noise. A bank of evergreen trees can hide a neighboring business or cut noise from a nearby roadway. And think of how your yard might benefit from a screened view or less noise. And they can also be a food crop, whether for serious gathering or the occasional nut harvest or jelly making. Gathering pecans or picking wild plums from your own tree has the potential of a fun family activity. So trees give back to us in many ways. So getting started, some things to think about when we pick a tree. And like a realtor, we need to think about location, location, location. And with trees, this means trees for our specific Dallas-Fort Worth area. No matter how fond memories you have of a tree that you grew up with on the East Coast, or pine trees that you lovingly looked at in the Carolinas, They're not going to grow here in Texas. So our first consideration is what trees do well right here in Dallas, Fort Worth, right in our own backyard. What soil type, the climate, the summer heat, the gully washer rains, all these things that a tree will be subjected to. Also think about what's going on in your front yard or your backyard. Do you have power lines crossing the area? Will it be a playground for the kids? Do you plan on adding other structures like a shed, playground equipment? And how much maintenance are you really willing to do? Do you mind raking leaves or ducking low hanging limbs? Think about how much the tree will grow and how much shade it will cast and how much lawn you will lose. So, how to pick that tree? Trees come in a variety of sizes, from small, like redbuds and wild plums, to our huge trees, like oaks and magnolias. They each need a minimum piece of land to spread their roots and to stay healthy. The small trees are suitable for focal points near the house, but not right up against it. They need a bed at least 8 feet by 8 feet, or it could be 4 feet by 15 feet, as long as it has 60 square feet. Small trees can be 12 to 20 feet tall. Medium-sized trees are most often used in yards and urban lots. They run 20 to 40 feet tall. Since they're bigger, they need more room to grow. So give them an 11 or 12-foot square of ground. That also might be 8 by 15 feet. Again, as long as they have 120 square feet of space to grow in. And then the largest trees need the most space, and give them the whole front yard, or at least 180 square feet. For example, 30 by 6 feet in a parkway. And of course, keep it away from the house. So you avoid problems by thinking of the space that that tree is going to share, not just where you plant it right now, but 50 years from now. Will its roots crack sidewalks, driveways, or paving? Will it drop fruit on the driveway or patio? Will that 5-foot sapling that you plant 5 feet from the corner of your house grow to be a mighty oak and fight with the gutters and roof line? Will its branches bang against the chimney? Will a little tree in the parkway block a stop sign or scratch cars that are parked at the curb? If you have power lines over your property, don't let your tree become a utility company problem. There are many small trees that don't grow tall enough to get into power lines. And if you already have a tree with this problem, you might want to hire an arborist to keep your tree trimmed back so the power company doesn't have to cut out the crown. And what about your neighbors? They may not appreciate your tree growing over their property, maybe blocking their vegetable garden or dropping cottonwood seeds in the pool. The answer to all of these potential problems is to think ahead. Imagine what a tree will look like full grown. How tall will it get? How wide? Where will the branches reach? Will it flower? Will the seeds make a mess? So thinking about it will stop problems before it happens. So we've talked about the right tree, the size of the tree, and there's deciduous evergreen versus evergreen. How about traits of the tree? You want a native? You want fall color? You want it to flower, to be drought tolerant? How will it cope with the standing water after that gully washer in your front yard? Do you want it to have fruits or nuts? As we talked about, trees vary widely in how tall and how wide they grow. Small trees are usually 12 to 20 feet at maturity. So don't be misled by a small tree in the shopping mall parking lot. That little 5-foot square bit of soil may look good now, but in a few years, that oak may be cracking the parking space. Small trees are the best choice for near a house or under power lines. The medium trees have a range of 20 to 40 feet, and they're best for most urban lots. And the big trees are over 40 feet, and that may mean a 120-foot bur oak or a standard magnolia. So don't be fooled by tiny baby trees. As the old saw says, mighty oaks from little acorns grow. And we talked about earlier about native trees and what makes them a good choice. Well, first of all, native trees evolved here. They are fully adapted to not only survive, but thrive in this very ecosystem. Some, like the bur oaks, can be native to a wide range from Canada to Texas, but some, like the lost maples, are native only to the small valley where we find them, and they don't grow anywhere else. What we call native plants were here when the colonists arrived. Other plants that do well here but came from elsewhere are called well adapted. And these plants were brought over maybe from China, Europe, or Africa, but from areas that had ecosystems similar to ours. Some of our Mediterranean herbs come from rocky, dry areas of Europe, and they do well here. They aren't native, but they are well adapted. And you don't want plants that don't do well in our area. They just take too much care and it's too much amending to thrive. So let's go over a few reasons why native plants are better than other choices. Because they evolved here, they're low maintenance and they've survived here quite nicely on their own for thousands or maybe millions of years. They have adapted and are resistant to local pests. They know our temperature range, our soil type, and they like it. They've experienced our summer heat and our droughts, our spring gully washers and erosion. Natives are just easier to care for. They've done it on their own and for a long time. And they're also part of our diverse ecosystem. They connect to the rest of nature. They're food for native insects. They're fruit and housing for our birds here. They're habitat for local mammals. They all belong here and they work together. But on the other hand, if your home landscape has been greatly changed, maybe the native soil on your property has been scraped away during building, or you've amended a lot, added sprinklers, or added soil or sod, a well-adapted tree may be more suitable to the new landscape. Another consideration is how big should I buy? That's more a question about you than the tree. How fast do you want results? How much time, patience, and money do you have? Whether you get a small, bare-rooted sapling, a gallon pot, a 5-gallon pot, or even a large bald and burlap tree, there will not be a great difference in size after several years. The smaller trees, starting younger, grow their roots out into the soil quicker, so they grow faster at the start. A potted tree will start slower as it develops a wider reach for its roots. And the larger, bald trees have lost much of their root ball and will need to spend time and energy growing those back before it can start growing above ground again. But the result is that after 10 or 20 years, which is not long for a tree, all will look about the same size. So the real question is, how fast a result do you want? The big tree will give instant results in the landscape, but they're more expensive and harder to plant. The smaller tree takes time and patience, but less money and a smaller hole to dig. Another thought, should it be a container, bare root, bald, or burlap? Container grown trees have all of their roots intact, so they'll reestablish more quickly when planted. We can now buy very large trees that have been grown or at least finished in containers. And these can be planted at any time of the year. Remember that the soil mixes that growers use in these pots are chosen partially for their light weight so they can reduce shipping costs. This means that the trees can dry out more quickly, so hand watering will be required for the first year or two. Bald and burlap trees have been dug from the nursery, from nature, or from one spot in the landscape to another and moved to some other location. There is some root loss associated with the digging, so these trees typically do not start growing actively for the first 1 to 3 years. The actual digging is done during the winter dormant season, but the trees are often held in the nursery for several months. These cured trees will have started to produce new roots by the time you buy them. And then bare rooted trees suffer the most root loss during digging, so they have the highest mortality rate. Only young saplings are typically transplanted this way, most commonly fruit and pecan trees. Planting these is a process for midwinter only. So you're going to the nursery to buy that tree. What are some things to look for? One is a strong single leader trunk. And of course, this is true for those trees that do have a single leader. You have some trees like crepe myrtles and others that may be multi-trunked, but the same rule goes for either. You don't want a tree that has a broken or split trunk. This will cause major problems as it grows. And you want a nice form or overall shape. Oddly distorted trees will only get uglier. No trunk damage or wounds. Healthy trees should have healthy leaves, green, lush, crisp. Leaves that are yellowing, drooping, damaged, frayed, or small or odd shape are all signs of poor health. Trunk flare, that's the slight widening at the ground level where the trunk turns to roots. If the flare is too high, the tree is pushed out of the pot. Or if it's not there at all, the tree may be planted too deep for good health. Soil in the pot should be clear of weeds. If it has weeds, that's an indication that the tree has been in the pot too long and it has not sold. The pot should be appropriate for the tree size, so it's not root bound or over potted. You also want to look carefully at the roots. A good nursery understands root health and doesn't mind if you carefully pull the plant from the pot to examine the roots. You want a fine webbing of white roots on the surface of the root ball. Brown or black roots means the plant has been overwatered, maybe dying. Too much root, especially circling the pot or filling it, means the tree has been in the pot too long. You would have to cut the circling roots free and shock the plant to get them unwound. So it's best to avoid them in the first place. After all of that, you may want to just grow it yourself from seed. That's another way to get a tree. It's a great project from young kids, or if you want to have many trees for very little money. You can collect seeds from the trees you admire, and you'll know what the mature tree will look like. So plant them in large pots or directly in the ground where you want the final tree to grow. Protect them from squirrels and other animals with hardware cloth or a wire cage. It may take a year or two to see them actual growth, but it gives great joy to watch it get bigger and stronger. And in 10 years, you won't be able to tell it from the big store-bought one. Now what you really came for. Dick's going to give you some tree suggestions, get you started.
Thank you, Patsy. These are some tree suggestions. We're not going to talk about every possible tree that you can use. You can go to the Texas Forest Service website and get a list of all the different ones there. But these will be some of the more popular trees that do well in our area. The Afghan pine is a fairly rapid grower. It's well adapted to our alkaline soils. It's great as a specimen or as a windbreak, and it has a pyramidal evergreen shape. It is 40 to 50 feet tall and 20 to 30 feet wide. If you want a small tree, the smoke tree, it would be a good choice. It's a round top tree with moderate rate of growth. It has wispy flowers, and they're produced in big billows in May and June, hence the name smoke tree. It's deciduous, it's 12 to 15 feet tall and 8 to 10 feet wide. Bald cypress is a large upright tree that thrives in wet conditions. So if you tend to have areas in your yard where there's a lot of moisture, that might be a good place to put this tree. The foliage turns bright orange or red in the fall. It's a deciduous tree and it's native to Texas. It gets 60 to 70 feet tall and 30 to 4 feet wide. It can develop what are called knees, and there are some newer hybrid varieties that are available that may not develop those knees. The bur oak is a large rounded shade tree native to Texas, has yellow fall color with golf ball sized acorns. You don't want one of those to hit you on the head. It's deciduous, it's 50 to 60 feet tall and 50 to 60 feet wide. Cedar elm is a large upright shade tree, also native to Texas. It has beautiful form and yellow-orange fall color. It's deciduous, it's 50 to 60 feet tall and 40 to 50 feet wide. The Chinese pistache is a large shade tree with beautiful fall color, scarlet, crimson, orange, sometimes yellow. Female specimens bear clusters of red fruit. This fruit can fall on the ground and may get a little messy. So you may want to consider getting a male tree rather than a female. It's deciduous. It gets 50 to 60 feet tall and 40 to 50 feet wide. The chinkapin oak is a large, rounded top shade tree native to Texas, which produces a bunch of acorns. It's native to the dry limestone cliffs and hillsides, but does well in other sites as well. It's deciduous, it's fast growing, it's 50 to 60 feet tall and 30 to 35 feet wide. So it's not quite as wide as some of the other oaks. The crepe myrtle is a small upright tree adapted over our entire state. There are many varieties and sizes. So when you're looking to plant one of these, take into consideration the mature size of this crepe myrtle and buy the one that's appropriate for the size where you're planting it. Showy flower sprays from early summer till first frost. Many have a beautiful peeling bark, and they're best used as a small specimen tree in sunny locations. It's deciduous, it's 12 to 25 feet tall and 10 to 15 feet wide. This is a sample of one of the crepe myrtles. This is the Natchez crepe myrtle. It's very vigorous, fast upright growth with large, fragrant white flowers. Spectacular cinnamon exfoliating bark on mature specimens. It's mildew resistant. It's considered one of the best crepe myrtles of all time. It gets to 25 feet tall at maturity. Deodar cedar is a large pyramidal tree often planted as a living Christmas tree. New dwarf, golden, and golden green varieties are available. It's evergreen, drought tolerant. It's 50 to 60 feet tall and 35 to 40 feet wide. If you want a very drought tolerant tree, the desert willow is a good choice. It's a small, fast growing tree with open, airy form, has trumpet shaped flowers, as you can see in the picture. And these are born through fall. The flowers can be pink, white, rose, or purple. It's deciduous, 20 to 25 feet tall and 10 to 15 feet wide. The catalpa is a cross between the desert willow and the catalpa tree. It's a deciduous tree, summer bloomer, showier than the desert willow, and pink, lavender, and white flowers. The dogwood is a small, rounded ornamental tree noted for its profusion of pure white flowers in spring. Leaves have red fall color. This is native to East Texas and does better in the more acidic soils. This tree is deciduous. It gets 20 to 25 feet tall and 15 to 20 feet wide. There is a native dogwood native to this area called the roughleaf dogwood. And this tree does very well in the area. It develops white clusters of flowers and Also produces berries that the birds really love in the fall. It also gets about 20 to 25 feet tall. Evergreen sumac, a small specimen tree used mainly for its spring flowers and fall color, drought tolerant, evergreen, to only 10 to 15 feet tall and 10 to 15 feet wide. Eve's necklace, a medium-sized single trunk specimen tree, blooms with pinkish wisteria-like flowers in full sun. The fruit are 3 to 7 inch necklaces of black beads, as you can see in the picture right here. It's a deciduous tree. It's 10 to 15 feet tall and 10 to 15 feet wide, and it does okay in part shade. The ginkgo biloba is a beautiful shade tree, very slow growing, grows at 1 foot a year, drops all its leaves at one time, gets 50 to 60 feet tall and 30 to 40 feet wide. You may want to consider getting a male ginkgo and be sure it's a male, because the flowers that are produced and then dropped of the female tree are not, you may not enjoy that aroma. They get and they get 50 to 60 feet tall and 30, 40 feet wide. The golden rain tree is a rounded ornamental specimen tree. It blooms in summer with large masses of brilliant yellow flowers followed by pink seed pods, and they resemble Chinese lanterns. It's deciduous, gets 25 to 30 feet tall and 25 to 30 feet wide. If you visit the Fort Worth Botanic Garden, they have a beautiful example of this tree right outside one of their main entrances. They also have one at the Dallas Arboretum that you can see. The Japanese black pine is a large irregular tree that develops a bonsai form with age, excellent in planters as a specimen. It's evergreen, 25 to 30 feet tall and 25 to 30 feet wide. The Japanese ligustrum, a small rounded tree, moderate to rapid growth, generally grown as a large shrub. It requires pruning. The flowers do have a wonderful aroma. The white flowers in spring and has black clusters of berries in the fall. It's evergreen, 20 to 25 feet tall and 15 to 20 feet wide. Japanese maple, round-headed tree with deeply lobed leaves. The leaves are in the shape of your palm of your hand. It has a magnificent color of orange to yellow or red in the fall. There are many different cultivars, and they all come in all different sizes. It's excellent in small gardens, large containers, and bonsai. They are deciduous. They can get 3 to 25 feet tall and 3 to 20 feet wide. The live oak tree, another Texas native tree, has broad, spreading, heavily limbed crown, long-lived, very sturdy, and one of our best shade trees. Don't expect to be able to grow anything under it because it stays evergreen all year round and you won't get any sun under there. It does drop its leaves in spring. Sometimes we'll get calls at the extension office, well, what's happening to my live oak? So don't be surprised if it drops some of its leaves in the spring. It gets 50 to 60 feet tall and 60 to 70 feet wide. The Mexican buckeye is a small, shrubby, often multi-trunk specimen tree. You can see the wonderful seed pods that it has, and there's 3 seeds in each of those pods, and it does look kind of resemble a buckeye. That's the reason it got its name. Attractive as an understory tree, best when it has a half day of sun. It's deciduous, 10 to 30 feet tall, and 10 to 12 feet wide. The Mexican plum is a medium-sized single trunk tree. It heralds the spring with fragrant clouds of white flowers. You can smell it for large areas of your yard. Your neighbors will love the smell. It's planted together with red buds. It makes a striking duo. The plums you can also make jelly out of. It's deciduous. It's 15 to 30 feet tall, 10 to 15 feet wide. Nellie R. Stevens holly, a fast-growing large shrub or small tree, often used as a screening tree. It's drought tolerant as well as poor soil, and it is evergreen, 10 to 15 feet tall and 10 to 15 feet wide. The Osage orange, also called a bodark, because the branches are arching like a bow, and the native Indians used to make bows out of those branches. It's an extremely fast-growing tree with open growth habit, tolerates poor soil, um, heat, cold, wind, and drought. It's deciduous, 40 to 50 feet tall, and 35 to 40 feet wide. The pecan is the state tree of Texas. It's a large, graceful, shapely tree valued for both its shade and its delicious nuts. Who doesn't like pecans? Deciduous, 60 to 70 feet tall and 50 to 60 feet wide. The pinyon pine is a small horizontal tree, symmetrical in youth and flat crowned with age. It's native to West Texas. Cones contain edible seeds. It's valued for its use as firewood, and we use it in our chimeneas. It's evergreen. It's 10 to 15 feet tall and 8 to 10 feet wide. The possum haw holly is an upright native Texas shrub or small tree prized for its ornamental fruit that we see in the fall. The birds love the berries on this tree. Leaves turn yellow in the fall. Red berries ripen and persist until the birds have eaten all of them. It's deciduous, 12 to 15 feet tall and 8 to 10 feet wide. The prairie flame leaf sumac, small to medium-sized single trunk tree. White flowers appear in the heat of summer. You get beautiful, fiery-looking fall flame color. It's outstanding for the color in the fall. It's deciduous, 10 to 15 feet tall and 10 to 15 feet wide. The redbud, small rounded ornamental tree with small rosy pink flowers in early spring before the leaves appear. It has several varieties. There's a Texas and Oklahoma, forest pansy, white bud, and there's also a weeping variety. It's deciduous. It's 20 to 25 feet tall and 20 to 25 feet wide. The rusty black-haw viburnum, a small single trunk tree with a broad crown. Exceptionally attractive, showy flowers, fall color, and dark purple drupes of fruit. It's deciduous, 12 to 20 feet tall and 10 to 15 feet wide. The saucer magnolia, a small ornamental flowering tree, beautiful pinkish red flowers, and these show well before the leaves appear in early spring. It's deciduous, it's 15 to 20 feet tall and 10 to 15 feet wide. The Chantal maple, it has glossy dark green star-shaped foliage that remains in good shape throughout the whole season. It develops beautiful fall color. It can take our warm, hot summers. The colors in the fall can range from yellow to dark purple. It's deciduous. It's 20 to 25 feet tall and 15 to 20 feet wide. The shoe-marred red oak, large, majestic, rounded shade tree with open branching habit, brilliant red fall color, great lawn or street tree. It's deciduous, 50 to 60 feet tall and 40 to 50 feet wide. The southern magnolia is a large upright tree valued for its large glossy foliage and large fragrant flowers that bloom in summer. It's native to East Texas, but it does just fine in our area. New and improved cultivars are on the market. These trees are evergreen. The ones that are on the market, there is a little gem magnolia that gets about 35 feet tall, and there is a teddy bear magnolia that only gets about 20 feet tall. So these are excellent trees for smaller spaces. The southern magnolia gets 60 to 70 feet tall and 35 to 40 feet wide. Sweet gum tree is a large shade tree, upright and somewhat cone-shaped when young. Leaves turn purple, yellow, or red in the fall. There are also several cultivars available on this tree. The rotundoloa is one of the varieties, 60 to 70 feet tall and 35 to 40 feet wide. The sycamore tree, a fast-growing shade tree that tolerates most soils. It does best with deep watering and does better in moist areas in your yard. It's native to Texas. Improved varieties are also available to this tree. It gets 60 to 70 feet tall and 35 to 40 feet wide. One thing to remember in speaking about fast-growing trees is your fast-growing trees usually aren't as long-lived as your slower-growing trees. Texas mountain laurel, a small evergreen tree, one to several trunks, makes heavy shade because it's a very thick, dense leafing shrub, a tree. Violet pea-shaped flower clusters often compared to the scent of grape Kool-Aid. Tough beans with red pods and extremely toxic, so don't eat the seed pods. It's 10 to 15 feet tall and 10 to 15 feet wide. The chase tree, also called the Texas lilac tree, is fast-growing small tree, ornamental, sometimes called the chase tree, usually multi-trunked, spikes of lavender blue flowers in spring and fall. The insects love this tree. The butterflies love this tree. There are pink and white varieties available. It's deciduous. It's 15 to 20 feet tall and 10 to 15 feet wide. The water oak is not an oak that you're going to see a whole lot in our area because it prefers a more acidic type soil, but it is a large round top shade tree adaptable to most soils. It is native to East Texas, so it prefers the acidic soils. Deciduous, 50 to 60 feet tall and 40 to 50 feet wide. Weeping willow, a very fast-growing shade tree, tolerates poor soils and poor drainage and likes moisture conditions. Requires plenty of space and water, and it's best near a stream or a lake. It's deciduous, 50 to 60 feet tall, 40 to 50 feet wide. The western soapberry, upright, oval-shaped, moderate rate of growth, native to most of Texas, except the high plains. It's suited almost anywhere. Particularly well suited to naturalized plantings. It's deciduous, 30 to 50 feet tall, 20 to 30 feet wide. The wisteria, twining, fast-growing woody vine with clusters of beautiful, fragrant violet, blue, or white flowers, but it can be trained into a small, single-trunked ornamental tree. It blooms before the leaves appear in the spring. The lacy oak is a beautiful small oak. So if you want an oak for a smaller area, it's a very good choice. It's native to the Texas Hill Country, spreading canopy with attractive bluish green foliage, has yellow fall color. It has high tolerance to heat, drought, alkaline soil, and pests. Makes wonderful shade tree for smaller yards, 20 to 25 feet tall, 15 to 20 feet wide. Yopon holly, also called Ilex bombatoria, because if you eat those berries, they could make you sick at your stomach. It's a small ornamental tree native to Texas, usually grown as a multi-trunk specimen, has bright red fruit, persists all winter long, and is a favorite for birds, especially the cedar waxwings and robins. It's evergreen, 15 to 20 feet tall, and 10 to 15 feet wide. As I mentioned, this is not meant to be a list of all the trees that are possible, and I will show you a website where you can go to get more information. We already talked about how to plant the tree, but I'm going to bring out some other points of the importance of how to plant it in the ground. You want the hole to be twice the diameter of the root ball, and you do not need to make it any deeper than the root ball needs to be planted in the ground. If there are no roots available, when you're taking the plant out of the pot, then you should probably plant it an inch or two above the soil level when you're putting it into the ground. You only use native soil, no potting soil, and water the soil as you put it in around the tree. It's important to water very, very deeply, so make sure that you water with a with a hose, so that you can make sure it gets all the way to the bottom. And that's another reason to water it as you put it in the ground. Sometimes it's best to create a berm around the tree. Make sure it has plenty of sun and space. Again, select the right tree for the area where you're planting it. You don't want to put a tree that's going to get 50 feet tall and 50 feet wide, 10 feet from your house. Check the roots that are free and spread. Make sure they're not circling roots that will girdle the tree. Hole 2 times as wide, use existing soil. No amendments needed. Build the berm, and then you can fill it with mulch. You don't have to put the mulch up against the trunk of the tree. You can protect the bark if you have one of the thinner skinned bark trees like the Texas red oak, for example. You can buy a paper wrap where you can protect it from sun scald. Sometimes if these younger trees are exposed to sun, that bark will start peeling. Some trees may need to be staked. Depending upon the diameter of the tree, if it's not real sturdy, then it should be staked maybe the first year or two to make sure that it becomes strong enough to withstand our strong winds. Be sure and water well. Watering schedule: water daily the first week, every other day the second week, twice a week the third week, and the fourth week and beyond as needed. Be sure and try to pick the right tree, right place, properly maintain it. Be sure and allow enough for root growth. Don't plant it under power lines. If you're going to be under power lines, get one of the smaller trees. It only gets maybe 20 feet tall. Be nice not to put it over your neighbor's house either. And you make sure it doesn't get too much shade. And be aware of walks and roadways. There are reasons to prune the tree. One is to correct a problem. You can prolong the health of the tree by keeping the dead limbs off and getting rid of crossing branches. Another reason to prune is for fruit production and to shape the tree. Sometimes you will want it to have the proper shape. Some people just like to mess with the tree and want to go out to prune it just to be doing something. Safety is always one of the main concerns. As a rule, if you have to get on a ladder to prune your tree, you probably ought to get an arborist, someone that's trained and has liability to cover in case there's an accident. Assess your own willingness and ability to complete the task safely. Consider your options and alternatives before doing anything, and have an objective in mind before you start doing anything. Shade trees are traditionally pruned during the dormant season, which is winter, before bud break. Shade trees can be successfully pruned after the initial flush. The wounds are most effectively sealed during this time. Avoid major pruning during spring when growth is active and tender. The red oak family is treated differently. You should not prune them between February and June to July because of the risk of oak wilt. And we were taught in citizen forestry that if you prune a red oak during the wrong time of the year, you should probably use a sealing paint. It can be a latex paint, but something should be done to seal it. And if you do that sealing, it needs to be done immediately after the cut. If you give it too long, the little beetle that spreads that fungus can get into that sap and infect your tree. Spring flowering trees prune after the flowering season has ceased, and summer flowering trees prune in winter or early spring. You can prune dead, broken, or damaged limbs, competing, crossing, rubbing branches, limbs that create a hazard. Make sure you can walk under them when you're mowing your yard. Young trees need corrective action sometimes to adjust the height of the tree. Keep in mind that you always want, on any tree, no matter what size it is, you want 2/3 canopy and only 1/3 trunk. So when you're trimming, look back and look at that tree and make sure you're keeping 2/3 of the canopy of that tree. Ideally, try to limit removal of existing foliage to 30% or less, and be real careful when pruning young trees. Large limbs that are pruned cause large wounds, and they can take a lot longer to heal. So make sure you do proper pruning. Do not prune the tree like this tree here. They took off all the foliage in between the very tips of that tree. That's called lion's tailing. And they've probably taken off too much foliage, and that tree will probably not do well. There are different types of pruning: cleaning, just removing the dead limbs; raising, lowering the lower branches; thinning, which you would do if you wanted to let more light in so that you could have more sunlight coming in under your tree. Now, you would not be able to do that with maybe your thicker, heavier, densely foliated trees like the live oak and the Texas mountain laurel, because those trees are going to be too dense to ever get any light under. You can also do reduction pruning, and I'll show you an example of that. This is how you would prune your tree if you have a larger, heavier branch. If you have a smaller branch, you can cut all the way back. You can see where I'm pointing here with the arrow. That's the branch collar. You always want to cut outside of that branch collar when you're pruning a branch. If you don't, that wound will not heal. If you've got a larger branch, you're going to make your first cut several inches away from that branch collar, and then you're going to go make your second cut 2 or 3 inches outside of that first cut. That prevents the bark from peeling off, whenever that branch is cut loose. And then your third cut is, there it is, would be right here, which is removing the little stub that's left. And you never want to leave stubs either. This is demonstrating a crotch pruning. It's also called subordination. What you're doing if you have an extra long branch and you want to shorten that branch is you cut it back just above where that main growth is coming from to a lateral branch. The lateral branch should be at least 1/3 the diameter of the larger branch that you're removing. But this will enable you to control maybe some branches that are kind of out of control on the tree, and you can shape it better that way. You also want to be careful of trees and branches that have what they call including bark. As you can see, this bark is included in this branching here. The Bradford pear is notoriously bad about this, which is the reason these are not used as much anymore, because that area will decay and the branches will break. If you do have to cut back, you want to make your pruning cut way back in here so that you make sure you get all of that included bark out of there. Water and debris gets into there and it will decay very quickly. Need help? Have questions about pruning? There are regular arborists and there are ISA arborists. An ISA arborist has to get recertified every year with educational hours. If you want to take a picture of this slide, this has the websites that you can go to find an arborist in your area. The treesaregood.org website will give you a list of arborists once you put in your zip code. The same is true for the ISA arborist website. For best local tree info, here are some websites: texastreeplanting.tamu.edu, and then the Texas Tree Selection Identification, which is foresttexastrees.gov forestry. And these are some reference books. If you want to learn more about trees, the field guide is a pocket version that you can carry with you. It has wonderful pictures showing the leaves, the bark, and the fruit that all these trees produce. There's also another one, Field Guide to Texas Trees, that is also very good. Don't forget that you can call our helpline and ask us any questions, and we are there to help you with your tree questions. If we are unable to help you, we would make a recommendation for an arborist and give you some good names of certified arborists. We always recommend at least 3 different arborists whenever we recommend them, so that you get different opinions. The Master Gardener Helpline is 817-884-1944. You can also mail us at tarrantmg@ag.tamu.edu. Okay. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation given by Patsy and I today, and we wish you good luck with your tree planting.